Today we're heading to Bay St. George, an area of southwestern Newfoundland with incredible French heritage. This place is rich with legendary players, songs and tunes. I'm Aaron Collis, and I play with the band Rum Ragged. For over a decade now, we've been collecting songs and tunes from around Newfoundland and Labrador that have been passed from person to person for generations. Now we're visiting some of the communities where we learn the music and some of the singers and players who help keep it alive. There's so much more to hear. Bay St. George and the Port-au-Port Peninsula is the heartland of Acadian Newfoundland. French culture is clear in the songs and stories shared here, and you can also see it in the styles of playing both the fiddle and accordion.
Ryan Perrier from St. George's. We're located in Bay St. George on the southwest coast of the island. Originally, this whole area was all French. Like my great-grandparents all spoke French. Of course, through, I guess, the American base in Stephenville and a few other things, the French was lost over the years, and a lot of the names were anglicized and everything. And so I know in most schools around here at the time, parents were told not to speak French at home to their kids, right? So, because they didn't want the kids to learn French. But so I guess through all that, a lot of it was lost, unfortunately. But the Port-au-Port Peninsula still got many more French speakers, I should say. And there's programs in place now to try and reintroduce the French. But there's definitely a rich French history. That's, I guess, where there's that bit of a different style to the music. I guess a lot of the people came from France and Magdalen Islands and Acadian communities in Cape Breton and those places, right? So,
how did you get into traditional music as a young fella?
My parents always really, it was always traditional music played in the house. And my parents, my grandparents, so it was just constantly, from the time I could remember, it was always traditional music and nothing else. So I kind of got into it through that way. And my grandfather played the mandolin, so he taught me a couple tunes. And then I picked up a bit of the guitar. And then my grandmother had an accordion, so she let me play it a couple times. And then I just kind of got into it after that and kind of started teaching myself. And then I met up with Jack Cormier, and he taught me a lot of his tunes. And really, I owe it all to him now for what I can play now.
Right on. So Jack, is he an accordion player? Or
yes,
is he...
yeah,
right
he's
on.
an accordion player from Cape St. George.
Cape St. George.
Yeah, he kind of took me under his wing, and he showed me a lot of tunes and taught me everything I know now. So yeah, Jack he was playing from the time he was 7, I believe. And he's up in his 80s now, so, and he was still playing up until a few years ago. And he learned a lot of tunes his grandmother taught him, and she used to sing the tunes and jig them and she couldn't play or nothing, but he picked them up like that. And I had it a lot easier because, I had a phone, I could record the tunes and play them over and over. And like he said, when he learned tunes years ago, he said you'd learn a tune and it might be 6 months before you'd hear it again. So he said you try and keep the first side in your mind and whistle it and hum it, and you learn that, and then you might hear the second side 6 months' time, or you may never, and they just make up a side for it. And, and then I guess there was, when records and stuff came out and cassettes, then they started getting stuff from Cape Breton. But a lot of the original tunes were all just, from the area. Where they came from, I'm not sure. But
was Jack, was he playing for dances mainly when he was playing?
Mainly square dances, step dancers, yeah. And his grandmother actually used to sing for the square dances. She'd sing tunes, yeah. But he played for a lot of square dances. And of course, then him and his brother Mark got into a band called T Jardin. And so I started playing with them when I started with Jack, and then now myself and Mark still play.
A lot of the tunes that Jack would have taught you are from this area?
For the most part, yeah.
Yes,
a lot of different influence, a lot of Cape Breton tunes, Irish, but mostly there's a lot of tunes that were composed here by the older people, and Jack composed many tunes himself. And of course there's a lot of influence with Bernie Felix and Felix Turret, and lots of guys around here playing, Joe Young.
There's
a lot of tunes, and I got a lot of tunes from those guys as well.
I hear tell of a lot of the French tunes down in Port au Port. Is that something that carries over here? Just
Yes, mostly a lot of French tunes. Yeah, people call it a French style, but as a
Acadian
even
style.
Acadian, even the Scottish and Irish tunes. There's more of a we put a French. I guess you'd call it a French spin on it.
Yeah, like I feel like it's more, it got more staccato maybe, or more bounce to it. Or something.
Yeah,
I don't know, it's cool.
There's a bit of a drive to it. For
Yeah,
sure,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and a lot of that was because of for playing for dances.
Right.
They played for square dances and step dancers, and if you hear videos from years ago, the players around here played really fast, like too fast almost, but it was extremely fast. But it was because of the step dancers and it was played to that speed, right?
You got a gig tonight now with Road Blows Rock.
Yes, yeah.
So how long have you been playing with the boys?
We're just a little over 2 years now since we first started. We kind of just got together at a bar in Stephenville and started doing sessions every week together and playing tunes and trying to keep the tradition alive is the main thing for us and have a bit of fun while we're at it. And the biggest thing for us is preserving the tunes from around here.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make up a lot of sets that are tunes that are based out of this area, kind of try and keep it a bit different, right?
Do you find you have to change anything about how you play them for like a band setting, or is it just?
Not necessarily, no. We just kind of play off each other.
Yeah, I guess the music got to get that drive to it,
Yeah,
so it's just
for sure,
adding the drums and stuff.
And it's all by ear, so we just try and drive it as much as we can.
Yeah.
Get the people on the floor. But
When you head out onto the Port au Port Peninsula and go just about as far as you can go, you get to Black Duck Brook, where we met up with the incredible accordion player Bernie Felix. He's been passing on music to the younger generations for years, and Bernie's style of playing is now the style of playing on the Port au Port Peninsula.
I'm Bernard Felix, and you're welcome to my rec room here. This is Black Duck Brook on Port au Port Peninsula, west coast of Newfoundland. Actually, my parents' house is just about maybe a 2-minute walk from here, and that's where I learned to play the accordion. There was a lot of music. My older brother, Gerard, he's 12 years older than me, and he was the first one. Mom prayed to have an accordion player, and out popped Gerard, and he turned out to be an accordion player. As I grew up, there were guys like Joe Young. My brother Gerard, too, of course, he was a pretty good player by then. He was 12 years older than me, so he'd been, like by the time I was 10, he was 22. So he was like all these teenage years, I was hearing this. Uncle Emil Benmois, drop up, Mom's brother.
Right, I didn't realize he was your uncle, actually. Yeah. And he's from Black Duck.
Yeah, he'd be up doing tunes, and like everybody sang or played an instrument or step danced, or so I was, basically what I'm getting at is I was surrounded by music when I was growing up. I can remember the first night that I started playing. My brother had told me, he said, if you ever decide like to play the harmonica or the accordion, or Robert, he said, Red River Valley is a good one to start with. I said, Red River Valley? Yeah, I said, I know how that goes. I knew the air in my head, right? The old Western song. Here I am, like New Year's Eve. I was 9 years old, but I turned 10 in February.
Okay.
And it's New Year's Eve. I took the accordion and I started picking out Red River Valley with one finger, just finding the sounds, right? Just so, like, in school, when I teach the kids, they say, do you know all the tunes in this book? Like, I've got about 120 tunes in the book, right? Yeah, so I wrote the book. I said, I wrote it for you guys, like, over the years. So how could, well, you know all the tunes? I said, oh yeah. Well, I said, I didn't learn this way. I learned by ear. I learned by sound. It's a really a much easier way to play once you can find the sounds. Because once you become familiar, you only got 8 notes in your octave, so once you can find the sounds. But that's how I learned to play accordion, just by watching other musicians. And
if you're surrounded by it all the time, you're getting all kinds of tunes in your head. Yeah. Did you have a lot of tunes from the older players that were just from this area?
Well, there were some, like Uncle Emil Benmois, of course, but he made up his own tunes. And there were tunes, yeah, like I remember when I was growing up, like my brother had one that, the first one was in the arrangement was Gus LaCour's Reel, or Gus LaCour's Jig, and I think it's a Cape Breton tune. It's a really old fiddle tune. And the second one, when Gerard used to play it, he used to go into another one, It was made after the song Paddy McGinsey's Goat.
Oh yeah.
Right? Dum, 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 da, 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 da. Right? But then the jig was dum da da dum da 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 dum. Right? So they made a jig out of it. So like that was kind of a tune, like something like that would have been like from the area. Most of the tunes that I grew up were Scottish or Irish. They were old traditional tunes that people heard when they went to as lumberjacks in the woods and stuff like that. You know, they just heard tunes and then.
But so there's a lot of French heritage in this area. Are there any tunes that you know are French tunes, or is it just a certain style of playing?
Well, for me, like a lot of the French music that I played, like after I was telling you I went to Scarborough back in 1984. My cousin Howard Benoit, he went up there like I don't know, it might have been 10 or 15 years before I went up there, and he had went to Quebec and met Philippe Bruno. You know, one of the masters of folklore, the French Canadian music of Quebec, like, right? And he had recordings, and he passed them to me. So that's where I picked up most of my French Canadian stuff. You know, like it was hard to get music here, like recorded music. Howard passed me like maybe 6 or 7 90-minute cassette recordings of Philip that he went to his house and Philip played him tunes, like old traditional tunes of the French folklore and stuff like that. And even tunes that Howard had heard growing up, and Philip, you know, played them for him on the tape. And then I learned a lot of stuff like that, really.
Something I find like unique about up here, I mean, we have a few accordion players out home where I'm from, but the footwork, do you...
Yeah. That's probably the first thing I learned to do when I was about maybe 3 or 4 years old, was hit my feet. And then the kids say, well, there's reels and there's jigs. What's the difference? Well, I said, look, here's how it works. A reel is true to dump, and a jig is the dump. So, true to dump, true to dump, true to dump. So that was your reel beat, right? That's the way they hit their feet. The way we grew up was just the 3, right? And then the jigs, the dump, right? So that's the only difference between the jig and the reel, is just the rhythm.
And the players you would have seen when you were growing up around here, same style?
Yeah.
Ever? Yeah. So you learned a lot around like house parties and things, but when did you, as you mentioned, fromage?
Norman?
Yes. And when did that start?
Holy smokes, around 92, I guess, 1992, 93.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you play around in the area here?
There's a picture back there. Bernard Felix and the Fromage brothers. That's the photograph from that little cassette. We're together for 9 years.
I think one of my first introductions to music from this area would have been, you had a tape called Carrying On the Tradition, I think.
Yeah.
And I met you at the Eastport Accordion Festival. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
2006.
I remember that.
Now,
you had hair, too.
Yes, I too had hair. I don't know what you want to do, playing accordion and losing hair, but going too fast, I suppose.
You just wind up pulling it out. Yeah, and they say they're really good players. I don't have any hair at all, right?
You talk about carrying on the tradition, like the name of the album. You've been teaching accordion here now at the schools for some time, haven't you?
Yeah, this is pretty, like 17, 18 years. It's been, 2007, I think we did a pilot project, and then it went on from there. So it's been a long time.
There's a proper interest in the young people wanting to learn the tunes, or?
Yeah, there were a few over the years that really got into it,
Can I throw one question at you, buddy? I was going to ask, when you were playing for square dances, where would those kind of dance figures be from, and were you playing mostly jigs, reels?
That's an interesting question, because the first time I played for a square dance in Quebec, they use reels. And what happens with a reel is that you can play the reel faster, but the dance itself runs slower because of the tempo, which was nice for the dancers, not so good for the player. These dances go like 20, 25 minutes long, right? And you flat out with reels. But when I grew up, we used jigs. And with jigs, you really have to slow it down. You can't just go flying with jigs, because you're going to kill somebody. I mean, there's arms and legs flying all over the place. So I pretty well, like, I'd be watching the the dancers and if they're looking at me like, bring it up. Well, then, but I'll be watching them because jigs can't fly. When I grew up, square dances were jigs. It was a jig beat.
What do you figure? Play a little tune or something?
I haven't played that in a long time, man. Holy smoke.